Hello there, Scott Spann here from my sailboat office in Sausalito, California. People have been asking me for years to codify what I've done, to write it down, to write a book, to create a training. And I did a training several years ago and then got really busy and haven't had a chance to get back to it. So I want to do a couple of things. One is I want to give you a quick, hopefully a 10-minute overview, we'll see if I can make that, of the system I've developed for enabling us to solve complex multi-stakeholder problems at scale. Problems that some people call impossible to solve or wicked problems. And they're the kinds of problems that we've just simply got to figure out how to solve. So I'm entitling this Our Struggle with Reality, because we tend to struggle with reality, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute, what I mean by that. But I'm calling it On the Path to Effortless Leadership. And that's not an idealistic state, it's actually an imperative. It's got to become relatively effortless, because the number and kinds of problems coming down the pike, we simply can't keep applying the same methodologies we've applied for the last 10, 20, 30 years and expect a significantly different result. So let me move into this as quickly as I can to get you through this. So our struggle, whether we're a leader, a consultant supporting leaders in organizations, an activist trying to create social or environmental change, a foundation officer, whether we're an official or an elected representative in a city, a county, a state, the federal level, basically when we're having to think strategically and be able to execute strategically in a way to actually change something in a significant way, whether we're doing it at the level of an individual working one-on-one, whether we're doing it with a team, an organization, a market or constituents, or at the level of a social or natural ecosystem, and whether we're caught in or stuck around strategy or decision-making or execution or conflict, if we're struggling, something is out of alignment. I mean, we know that from, we've had cars when they're out of alignment. We've tried to put pieces together on something when it's out of alignment. It doesn't work. We can't keep working harder and harder, doing more and more of the same and expecting a significantly different or better result. It's just, I think that's the definition of insanity, actually. When we're struggling, we're basically struggling with reality. And there are two aspects of reality that I come across that we're struggling with all the time. The first one is we're struggling with the reality of what it means to be human. We're working against what it means to be human rather than with what it means to be human. And I see that throughout organizations, throughout educational systems. It's just, it's epidemic. And I've trained as a trauma psychotherapist. I've trained as a developmental psychotherapist and practiced as a development and trauma psychotherapist, trained as a group psychotherapist. So I have some understanding about how humans are designed to function at a developmental level. We're also struggling with the reality of what it means to be in a complex system. And time again, we work against what it means to be in a complex adaptive system, not with it. And when we do that, we're going to struggle. So I want to give you then a lens. When I was a Rolfer, when I was a trauma psychotherapist, developmental psychotherapist, and as a systems thinker, I've been able to create or develop lenses to look at reality with in a way that sort of sorts everything out and makes sense of it. So let me share some of those lenses with you now. So one of them is what's going on. Now I developed this little chart to help some years back, maybe a decade ago or so. The number of issues and opportunities on the vertical axis, time on the horizontal axis, and there's these issues and opportunities that are emerging at an increasing rate. And those problems have two fundamental characteristics. They're highly complex. They're hard to get your head around. If we had all the resources we thought we needed to be able to solve them, the answer wouldn't be straightforward. They're things like energy, climate change, the economy, healthcare systems, and so forth. The second quality is that they are multi-stakeholder problems. They require a variety of actors in the system to collaborate, some of whom not only haven't collaborated before, they've actually been at war in certain situations that I've worked in. So those two qualities are what are driving those problems that are increasing at an increasing rate. Now, our typical ability to solve them is that white line below there that's at a much lower slope, and in fact, it starts at a lower level. And some people say I'm being very generous with that line actually goes down as we apply our typical solutions to these kinds of problems. We actually make things worse. Give them the benefit of the doubt for the moment. What I'm most concerned about either way is that growing gap between the rate of emergence of these kinds of problems and our typical ability to solve them. So that's one of the things that's going on. And it's happening, by the way, it's not just happening at a global level. It's happening for most of us in our individual daily lives. It's happening in our local communities. It's happening nationally and globally. What's going on, kind of part two. Now, this is a framework I borrowed from Dave Snowden. I recommend that you take a look at Dave's video. I trained with Dave, and this is one of those lenses that I find incredibly valuable. I have a whole other video on this, so I'm not going to go into this very much, except to say I'm going to focus in the upper left-hand quadrant in the work that I've developed, that we are operating in these complex adaptive worlds. Unlike complicated or simple systems, there aren't good practices or best practices. The solutions are emergent. Unlike complicated or simple worlds, hierarchy doesn't work in these situations. They need to be self-organizing ways of solving these kinds of problems in a complex adaptive system. And unlike complicated and simple, you don't analyze and categorize, you probe. And then you sense what's going on, and then you respond. And it's that probing that gets you into conversation, into communication with the complex adaptive system, allows those solutions to emerge. And so that's the quadrant we're operating in. So what's the solution to this if we're struggling with reality? Well, this concept of effortless consulting or effortless leadership, it's grounded in this notion of emergent impact, which comes out of that upper left-hand quadrant there. That the solutions have to arise from the ecosystem itself. And we all have experiences, by the way, of effortless performance, whether we've experienced it in some kind of performance, whether it's in music or dance or sports, whether we've witnessed it in those different domains. We've seen effortlessness, and we know that effortlessness exists. And I want to posit to you that there are initial conditions and relatively straightforward rule sets that allow you to experience effortlessness. But if we start in the wrong place, and if we proceed in the wrong way, we are definitely going to get into conflict with reality. So we need to be able to align with reality versus against reality, with what it means to be human in a complex system. And so I've developed over the last 15, 17, 18 years now, developed a way of getting into relationship and getting clear at 6 organic levels to produce 6 essential capabilities. And the relationship stuff comes out of my training as a psychotherapist, and that's where the psychotherapy happens. By the way, the psychotherapy is all stealth, just so you know, when this isn't a course in psychotherapy. It happens by using the system thinking tools in the clarity domain to actually set up the initial conditions and the rule sets that allow people to get into relationship with themselves, in relationship with one another, and in relationship, most importantly, with reality to be able to solve these complex multi-stakeholder problems. So I frame that out here, and you'll see the relationship column and the clarity column. You'll see those 6 organic levels. I'm not going to name them because I'm trying to get this done in 10 minutes, but you can read those. You can see what it evokes. I'll just give you one example. When I get into relationship with myself around something, and when I get clear inside of myself around something, then I am able to lead. And if I'm not in relationship with myself and I'm not clear with myself, you best not follow me. And you best not follow anyone else who's not in relationship with themselves and who's not clear. And then these other abilities evolve at these other levels. And each of those white text elements in there, each of those is a tool, a specific process that allows us to get into relationship and to get clear with one another using the clarity, the system thinking tools to create the relationship sets that we need to be able to solve at these different levels, to be able to solve the whole problem at a systemic level. A quick bit about me. Many of you know me, but for those of you that don't, I have deep experience as a business leader, initially with Arthur Andersen, and in consulting and doing other kinds of work there, as a COO and CEO in different organizations, as an executive director of nonprofits. I've been a trauma and developmental psychotherapist, and I've been a systems thinker and modeler for about the last, as I said, I think about 18 years now. I've worked in the business and social sectors with Apple, HP, the U.S. Navy, the White House, the Nature Conservancy. I've worked in child protection issues, educational issues, global water issues, affordable housing. So I worked across cultures. I've worked in Guatemala with the Quiché and Hmong peoples and former guerrilla leaders in the military. I've worked across industries and across different kinds of issues. So this has been a really well-tested framework, and I invite you to test it as well. Take your favorite issue as we move through some of these things and bang on it. This thing's got to work for you and for all of us. I live and work on a sailboat here in Sausalito, California with my wife Nicole, my son Kalen, and our little Welsh Terrier Kai. And for fun, of course, I sail, but mostly I'm an internationally competitive athlete. I play an archaic game called handball, four-wall handball, and that keeps me training most of the time to stay in decent enough shape to play that game. So that's what I do for fun, is train and play. So let me give you a preview of some of the things we're going to go through, just so you'll know. I'm going to take time to walk you through how you build an individual map. I'm hoping to knock that out, too, in about 10 minutes of a quick how-to for you. I'm going to work with a behavior over time graph, show you how you set one of those things up and how you do that to create team alignment. So this first one on individual maps is building individual trust and relationship and individual leadership capability. But this behavior over time graph is taking a whole team and getting a whole team aligned, even a diverse team members that have never met before. I've been able to align them, like at the Rosa Parks Elementary School around social equity issues with a diverse range of ethnicities. We will talk about integrated map. I'm not going to show you how to do one of these, not in this 20 minute video anyway. It takes a little bit longer to do that, but we will talk about roughly how those are constructed out of individual maps. Again, I'm not going to walk you through strategic analysis and how to do a strategic analysis map. That requires a large map. I will tell you that a strategic analysis, we do about 5 different kinds of analyses once you have one of those rigorous integrated maps. One of those is a piece of software developed, used by the intelligence services to identify nodes of high opportunity and networks of great uncertainty. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on the fact that we do archetype analyses, trends analyses. We have actors in the system and experts weight the map and a few other things. But we do come up with a strategic analysis of that map, and this becomes the mini map out of which people then carry on action. We're going to talk a little bit about complexity theory, just enough to let you know that complex systems have fundamentally very, very simple rule sets. And this simulation here of birds flocking has basically 4 simple rules that govern that behavior. And so when we get to that part, we'll talk about that. But I want to let you know that this idea of being able to self-organize networks to basically fly together or flock together or work together to collaborate in complex adaptive settings isn't as difficult as it may seem. It's once you understand how to do it. And then out of that, I plan on that little video, I've developed a flight manual. And the flight manual is how does a network, how does an organization, how does a group stay in awareness, in alignment, and in action over time at the level of the network, the team, and the individual. Because we have to be free, we have to have autonomy, we have to be able to get stuff done without bureaucracy and red tape and a whole bunch of meetings and things like that to tie us down. So we've got a whole suite of protocols for that, and I'll do a video on that as well. Where this is all headed is, and I just wanted to show you this image because I think a picture, is worth 1,000 words kind of thing. That on the left-hand side is the social network analysis map. In the middle is a systems map, and in the far right-hand side is a map of what a networked organization looks like. And I want you to notice the similarity between those, that we're not that far away, that blending human relationships with a systems orientation and mindset with a network organizational structure, that's the way to move forward. And that's what we're going to be exploring together. And that's something we simply have to figure it out. And why do we have to figure that out together? Well, the rate of loss that we're experiencing, whether it's loss in our social systems and social well-being, whether it's loss in our environmental systems or our economic systems, is increasing over time from everything that I can see over the last several years, and actually over a few decades. Our ability to recover that is not keeping pace with the rate of loss. Those two lines are not converging, they're diverging over time. We have to figure out a way to flip those two lines so that the loss is decreasing and the recovery is increasing. Those lines have to converge. And that little thing about time is there to remind us that we have a limited amount of time within which to do this. I don't want to startle anybody. You probably haven't. You probably know all this already. But when I was a trauma therapist, the biggest missing ingredient for almost everybody I worked with was time. I didn't have time to turn the wheel on the car. I didn't have time to put the brakes on. I didn't have time to get my hands up. I didn't have time to flee from my attacker, or whatever that was. Time was the element. So that's the resource that's most constrained. And I really believe that I've developed a set of resources that allow us to get through these things in an incredibly short period of time. In HP, we did it in as little as a month on a problem that they had called impossible to solve. So it's up to us to develop the human and digital technologies to evoke the relationship, clarity, and action needed to be able to respond to these issues at scale. And I totally believe we can do it. And I hope you'll follow me along in this journey while I show you what I believe, and then we'll build on that together. That's it for now. I'm going to try to stay under my 10 minutes with you, or at least close to it. Here are my coordinates. If you're watching this anywhere other than scottspann.com, feel free to go over there and leave me a comment. I certainly hope this was valuable to you. If you want to see more of these kinds of things, feel free to subscribe. You can subscribe on my YouTube channel. Give me a like, give me a share. Give me some kind of indication about whether this is useful for you or not. Let me know the kind of complex problem that you're trying to address. And we'll see if we can't come up with something to support you in that. Basically, that's it for now. Hope this finds you thriving wherever you are, and look forward to seeing you next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.